I was listening to Hoopshype Podcast with Michael Scotto, and he basically said, I believe if the Detroit Pistons were to add a Pascal Siakam, this would be like adding Blake Griffin 2.0. Now, when I heard this, I was like, that's a really interesting take from a national media member. It's a very interesting take. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to try to give a positive take and then a negative take with this quote from him. And I'll start positive first. If you look at Blake Griffin's time here in Detroit, Blake Griffin's time here in Detroit, obviously, he helped the Pistons get to the playoffs when he was healthy, relatively healthy. The Pistons were a 6 seed at one point. Obviously, he gets injured. They fall all the way to the 8 seed. And we all know what happens. The Pistons versus Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, and they get swept. But Detroit Blake Griffin was a very good player. I think he was NBA third team that season. He had career highs across the board. So I think positively, if saying, adding a Pascal Siakam would be like Blake Griffin 2.0, I think from that aspect, I think a lot of fans would probably take that right now, just given the state of the Detroit Pistons, given the state of how bad of a basketball team this is and how bad of a team this is to watch each and every night. I think this team just lacks veteran leadership. It lacks vets that can hold these young guys accountable. And I don't know if Pascal Siakam has those type of leadership qualities, but saying it would be a Blake Griffin 2.0, I think from a positive standpoint, that's what you can take away from it. Now, if you were to take away the negative standpoint of saying, like, adding Pascal would be Blake Griffin 2.0, this is where I think a lot of fans, a lot of you guys in the comment section watching right now would probably agree with me. Now, Pascal Siakam, we've seen him in the trade rumors, for the last two or 3 weeks. This guy wants to get paid. There's no denying that. The Kings were ready to, give them a first round pick, Davion Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, and Harrison Barnes. And, Pascal Siakam was like, are you going to give me a max deal? If not, no, I'm not interested. I don't think it's a good long-term fit for me on the Kings. And if you look at it, Pascal could possibly get paid $200 million this summer, you guys. Are you comfortable giving him 4 for 200, 5 for 235? That's the conversation you have to have. And I think Pascal Siakam, from a standpoint of getting a veteran, I think he checks that box. I think he's going to be the best forward that's available this summer. I think he does help a lot with the Pistons in the front court. But you have to ask yourself, is Pascal Siakam worth 4 for 200 million? Is he worth 5 for 235 million? So if you take these comments, adding Pascal would be another Blake Griffin. Yeah, I could see that from a negative standpoint of saying, like, contract wise, it would kind of put the Pistons in a sticky situation in terms of cap flexibility, right? Are you willing to just eat that and say, hey, we're going to just, max out Pascal and that's going to be our big splash this summer? I don't know. I think some fans would be happy with that if they did land a big name free agent. I think other fans would kind of be disappointed if you paid a guy in Pascal Siakam over $200 million over a 4-year period. And I think it's just, you could take this two ways. I think positive wise, I think adding a guy like that would make a whole lot of sense for the Pistons to actually do something, actually add a guy that's a plus asset, not a negative asset. But in the same standpoint, you could use your cap space wisely and kind of get, mid-tier guys, try to, fill out the roster, fill out the bench, get more pieces that maybe aren't household names, but at least they can contribute at a somewhat high level. But that's the thing, man. Like, I want to react to a couple of your comments. in the comment section. If you are watching live on YouTube and Facebook right now, we're going to go into a couple with this. This comes from Ryan Boseman. Shout out to Ryan. Can we get our big fish and still get Miles Bridges? Yes, I think you could. I just don't really know what a Miles Bridges number would be. And I'm just going to talk about Miles Bridges from a basketball standpoint. I'm not going to get on into any off the court stuff because I think that's just irresponsible because I don't know the situation and I think it would be irresponsible for me to even talk about it. I think from a basketball standpoint, it makes sense. Could you get him for a vet's minimum? I don't know. Could you get him anywhere from like 5 to 8? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what GMs around the league think of Miles Bridges. I know he was on the Detroit Pistons quote unquote wish list that Shams Charania did tweet out earlier this week. Or not this week, I should say. I think it was over 2 weeks ago now. But he could be a guy that maybe the Pistons want to grab and they don't want to spend a whole lot of money in. His off the court stuff could be to their advantage because they're not going to give a guy like $100 million with the baggage. But I think to your question, Ryan, yeah, you could get a big fish in Miles Bridges if you feel that you can trust Miles Bridges. I feel like you're just going to really have to keep an eye on him to make sure that he's 100% locked in. And no distractions on the court, because I think that's the last thing the Detroit Pistons need right now is distractions. But you can't argue the type of basketball player Miles Bridges is. This comes from Mr. McKinney. I don't trust Weaver to make an impactful trade. Mr. McKinney, what I would say is I think you're right. We haven't really seen it. We haven't seen him make an impactful trade since the Jeremy Grant trade. When it was a sign trade to the Denver Nuggets. That was the last impactful trade we've seen, and that was Weaver's first year in 2020 during the COVID year. We really haven't not seen an impactful trade. I mean, you could say Svi Mykhailiuk for Hamidou Diallo from a few years ago. That was somewhat impactful, but Hamidou was in the G League this year. He recently just got signed, I believe, by the Wizards, gave him a 10-day or something like that. But like, if you look at his trades, I mean, they're not the best. I mean, the Sadiq Bey for James Wiseman trade, I think, is the one trade that still has a bad taste in a lot of Detroit Pistons fans' mouth. I know I don't understand it. Obviously, I know Sadiq wanted to get paid, but at least he was a rotational player. But to your point, yeah, it's hard to trust him when he hasn't really had a good trade in recent memory.